Drawing comics takes an awful long time, especially when you're doing it part-time like us, and you could spend an entire week doing one page.
It forces you to maybe make decisions you wouldn't otherwise make.
There's this opportunity to do these micro moments and small things that come together in unique ways. Comic artists always want to tell these big stories, but anthologies are amazing because they capture tiny moments, and tiny moments are awesome.
This is my first anthology that I've ever participated in, and I found it to be such a cool experience to not only kind of come up with my work alongside other artists who had completely different styles.
They are a synergy of different talents coming together.
We all kind of came together and wanted to create together, and so I think that perspective of somebody who's in or doing an anthology, I think that community aspect's really special, and I think that actually translates to people who are looking at the anthology too.
Hi, my name is Aaron Williams.
And I'm Brian Judge.
Welcome to the Indie Comics Union.
And welcome to Project Artery. This is something that we've been working at for months and is finally completed. This is a very special anthology created by members of the Indie Comics Union. The theme of this anthology is things you would find in a toolkit. So each and every story is based off of just any item you would find that an artist would usually have on them. Anything from a pencil to a pen to a pair of scissors. You sort of get the idea. The original idea for this was created by Drew F. Lee, but I think every contributor really made this their own, with how they decided to go take each word and make a story.
Brian and I are the co-editors of this project, and we are so excited about how it's turned out. A few days ago, a handful of our contributors hopped into a Zoom call with us, and we chatted all about this project, all our creative processes, and we just wanted to celebrate the creation of this book. This is a project that we had so much fun putting together, and we hope that you like it. But if while you're watching this video, you want to pick up a physical copy of the book yourself, good news. We have a limited print run, and you can find all the links where you can pick up your own copy in the description box down below. Anyway, with that, allow me to introduce our talented creators.
I'm John Osborne. I'm the creator of the comic book series Frankenaut, and I did the story Scissors in the anthology Artery.
I'm Bradley Littlejohn, aka the Seahorsey. I'm an admin for the Indie Comic Union. And I'm not even on the anthology. I'm only here because I love these people so much and all the work that they do.
I'm Ryan Tavarez. I'm on Instagram as Tavarez Art, and I'm the creator of Nomads.
I'm Monty Cantsin, Dr. Monty Cantsin on Instagram. I'm currently writing and drawing Scum Circus, and I have a story in Artery, which the name of the story I'm after completely forgetting. Awakening.
Yeah, hi, I'm Gretchen at gretchen.draws on Instagram, and I did the art for the story Dirty Projector and Artery.
And I'm Seán Maher, and I wrote the story for Dirty Projector and Artery.
Hey, I'm Matt, Matt Laux, and you can find me on Instagram at Matt Draws D&D, and I'm just really excited to be part of this. This Artery, my piece in here is called Mesozoic Panache.
I'm Aaron Williams. You can find me on Instagram at Aaron M. Will, and I'm the co-editor of Artery and the creator of the story Sharper.
Hi, I'm Brian Judge, co-editor to Project Artery. You can find all of my comics online at oneonlycomics.com and oneonlycomics at Instagram. Yeah.
Cool.
Very cool. All right, Brian, hit him with the first question.
All right, I'm a little bit sort of thrown out of my loop. I guess starting off, a good question would be, shoot, I had my list, but now I'm on the computer. I'm completely in the blank right now, but I'm going to roll with it. Okay.
Take a breath, figure it out, and then we'll start a new cut tape.
Yeah. Sorry to put you on the spot, man.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Or something.
It's okay. I guess starting off, what word did you sort of gravitate to? Because the theme of this anthology, I don't know if you said this or not, the theme of the anthology are tools you would typically find in like an art tool bag, toolkit, and making stories based off of that word. And obviously, as people who make things as artists, we have sort of a connection to something like a pencil or a pen more so than an average person. So what word did you sort of gravitate to, and what was sort of like the first thought when you kind of picked your word, or that sort of process?
Personally, I was just looking for something that could go inside somebody's head. So anything smaller than a writing desk would have suited me. So I went with pencil. It was available, and it suited what I was doing. So.
Well, did you have your story in mind before picking the word?
It was more that I had certain visuals in mind rather than the entire story, just as to how a certain part of the story was going to go. I could kind of see that in my mind, and then I kind of built on that.
That's interesting. I think that personally speaking, my word was eraser, and I was sort of drawn to that as an idea of just the action of someone being erased. Now, honestly, the first thought I had was having like a period piece cartoonist in the 40s who's like, he's not getting the credit for his work, and that being the erased. But something about the word erased is evocative to me. So especially given your story seems really natural with the idea of pencil. I'm a little bit shocked to hear that.
Yeah, I suppose it could have worked just as well with pen. It could have worked with paintbrush. It could have worked with various other kind of.
It feels like really tailored to the word pencil.
But it did work well with pencil.
I know I was personally drawn to marker because it kind of when I think I got there by the time I got there, like half the stuff was already picked, and so I was kind of like, okay, well, what do we got left? Everybody's already got pen and pencil and eraser and stuff like that, and I saw marker, and like I remembered in my, now in my old age, growing up, we had the overhead projectors in school, and like how I just loved those stinking vis-a-vis markers that they had, and they just had this incredible quality like to write with, and I still haven't really found a marker that I like that much. But at the same time, like I just really like those markers, but I was also like really stuck for a long time in this kind of dumb Harold and the Purple Crayon kind of mindset, where I was like, well, I don't know, maybe you draw things when it comes real.
Your story, that is the first story in the book. It's the first story that comes up, and I think that's very fitting because of the chaotic, almost like anarchic energy that it has on it. Because it ends. Well, I'm not going to say what the story is, but it's very fitting that it has this like really great positive artistic energy, chaotic, but it still sort of hits home to this idea of taking these tools and using them to their fullest almost. And I think that's sort of like the perfect way to start the anthology. So
thank you. Yeah, because I basically kind of took what I just told you and I took it to Seán, and I was like, what do I have a marker? These are the things I'm thinking of, And
a lot of the time, like Gretchen was saying, like you have the kind of, SpongeBob episode where he finds a pencil is like, and he starts drawing things and they kind of like that's kind of like the first thing you sort of automatically think of. And then you're like, well, that's derivative and that's been done a million times. And, then you kind of think of, well, marker can mean a lot of different things, but, then we kind of kept going back to bringing back childhood memories and stuff of like being in school and things when you most people like that aren't artists, that's when they've had the most experience with markers is when they're in school. And I've been reading a lot of old Tales from the Crypt stories and watching a lot of old Twilight Zone shows and stuff as well, where they're all like little self-contained things. A lot of the times there's something really random and weird happens that don't make a lot of doesn't make a lot of like physical sense, but usually kind of wraps up where like not always things sometimes don't go wrong for the main character kind of thing. And, not that this is like a horror story or anything by any means, but it's that kind of thing that was on my mind when I was thinking about how to use a marker in that way.
Yeah, I just always like stories where something really odd happens and everyone just like, it's like, yeah, okay, we're doing this now.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, this is our life now.
Yeah. And Gretchen, I think maybe Monty and yours was one of the first ones we saw too, I think. I can't remember.
I know mine was,
which was really fun.
Yeah, so I know mine was definitely one of the first ones because I'm like that. I'm just like that. I tend to be very quick, but also I tend to be like, okay, if I don't do this right now, I'm just never gonna do it. So it's I gotta do it while it's top of mind, and I turn it right around, and then I give it to you guys, and then it's like, okay.
Plus, when something's like, you know, fresh in your mind, you're still excited about it. Like, I really want to get this, you know, while I'm still, you know, coming up with ideas and ways of doing it.
I say, Monty, were you also one of the first ones?
I think so, yeah. Just pretty much just trying not to delay the main work that I was doing. So I kind of got that out of the way.
You both set such a great bar for everybody just to get inspired. I mean, it was really fun. Like, okay, here we go. This is on.
It's on, kids. I say, yeah.
It's to that level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I made my mark.
Oh, ding, 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 ding. Nice. Yeah, I was in the same boat choosing the word as you, Gretchen. Like, I came into the project a little bit late. I was like, okay, what's left? I knew I wanted to do a horror story. So I was like, okay, I need something that's like, could be kind of scary. A scissors already taken, like pencil was taken, pen was taken. I'm like, all right, what is there? Okay, sharpener. I can work with that. So I told you guys, like, this is what I'm thinking. You're like, everyone was like, go for it. I'm like, are you sure it's not too violent or graphic? Just go for it. So yeah, that's what I ended up doing. Something with a sharpener.
That's sort of like the benefit of doing an anthology like this. I'm always in the mindset of the more you kind of put constraints on yourself, I mean, depending upon the constraints, of course, but that's when you really start get the outside of the box ideas. And certainly your story, it's one of the more, I don't know if unique. I think all the stories are really unique, but your story sort of stands out visually speaking, and the way that you compose the page for it. So.
Yeah, like my friends and family say I go a little too dank on the page layouts, but I can't help it. I like to put as many things on there as possible so that you can still read it, of course, but it's like, I can't help it. I like the way it looks, but.
Well, if the problem is adding too much detail and putting too much work into it, you got a pretty good problem.
Yeah.
It's really spooky. I love it.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
So Seán hadn't read it yet, and from your vague description, he's just like, "Wait, can you hand me the book and send it?"
Yeah, it's very like, you know, it evokes like, you know, like that, like, yeah, those like kind of older, you know, horror comics, you know, like almost a Junji Ito kind of.
Oh
vibe.
yeah, I love that guy.
Even just visually, it just kind of gives you that spooky feeling.
And you haven't even gotten to the good part.
Yeah.
So.
Actually, I think my favorite is really just how it starts with the sound of the eating at the dinner table.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tried to use those like little cues and stuff to lead the eye and stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Yeah. It just really, I was like, oh, I'm in this now. This is really going.
Thank you. What led you to your word, Matt?
Oh, I'm Brush, and I was excited because I've only fairly recently started painting. So I just feel extra fun with a brush. And so, and then I was going to do it first. I didn't do, actually. I was thinking of doing one of my D&D characters who's an artist and having her do some kind of cool scene with a like a mushroom man. And I kind of was working on it and had some stuff figured out about it. And then I wasn't really, just didn't feel it quite. I kept kind of putting it down, kind of, what's going to happen? And then, yeah, this was all because one morning I was having breakfast with my daughter and she was making a stegosaurus drawing, and then it just hit me like, oh, okay, the brush is one of these orthoceras, creatures, and this is the stegosaurus is having some fun and just a little bit of joy.
Brad, are you gonna play us a song?
Yeah, we can play while we're waiting for everybody to get here. I got to make sure I admit them though, so I may have some starts. Brian in. Let's see, coming in.
Intermission.
Intermission, yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
All I have are ukuleles. I just have really small versions of what you got.
So, Matt, do you want to continue the thought that you were saying? Or?
Sure, yeah. Anyway, I just had so much fun this is the first time I've ever been in an anthology, so this is really exciting for me. And I just, I'm proud of what I did, and I when I see the work, it just really brings me back to like June, July, August, and it was like the primary thing I was working on. And I love that. I love that kind of what you were saying, Bradley, about like a moment in time. And so I got really connected to the time and to this community through doing that thing. So I just my bit for the anthology. So I guess I'm really grateful.
I gotta say, your story, I'm surprised to hear that you're only recently doing painting, because it really does come across really well, that you have like a firm grasp on what you're doing. It almost makes me think, I have like a real like storybook, that's the word that jumps to mind when I think of your story. Like it has like a real like, not in a bad way, but like a kid's book, this really gentle, passive sort of style that I really do love, which is sort of funny in direct contrast to Aaron's story. A little bit,
totally different.
You know what? That's what we want. We want different teams, different genres, different everything, radically different. But when are you making a kid's book, I guess is the question to that. I feel like you'd be really good at it.
Yeah, I would love that. And I think that's probably something that will happen at some point. By the way, on the subject of the different styles, I really like I like how you organized it. I think that the stories follow really well together.
Thank you. I really just did it by whoever submitted one, so it wasn't a whole about that. But hey, I'll take the fame. I'll take the credit.
Good, honestly, though. You could have just taken that and it'd have been yours. So
yeah.
No, I just lucked out. So
John, what led you to scissors?
It was one of two left. That was the main thing. I had originally picked graffiti, and it had started working on it, had concept art done, and then realized that graffiti usually has color in it, and then realized that the book was going to be in black and white. So realized that was a bad idea, and it was between scissors, and I can't remember the other one. And I just kind of fit the idea to an idea I'd had for a while of, I can't believe that out of like probably millions of super rich, evil people out there, there's not one of them that thought, I want to do something different. I'm going to go the other direction with my money and kind of tell just a classic superhero origin story. But if it crossed paths with The Sopranos, that makes any sense. So, and then I had to figure out, okay, how do I condense this, the origin and then a little bit of the character itself down into these 4 pages. And that was the most fun, figuring out how, whose voice is speaking. Is it him? Is it someone else in the story? And telling his basic origin with it making sense in the limited amount of time. But afterwards, after I was done with it, I was so happy with the result, and that this anthology forced me into making it. So just loved it. And then once it was coupled with everyone else's work, and then once it all came together, just everything seemed to fit so well.
Yeah, for sure. I loved your story in there. I looked through them like, cause your story came in before I even started really doing the final inks on my pages. I'm like, oh, this is sweet. I gotta level up. I came here. I have to make the pages look as good as I can.
Well, thank you.
Oh, I just wanted to say, John, and all of it, like the art, of course, but the story is really fun too. And my favorite moment is when he gets up and it's like, I'm cut from a different cloth, and he's like not dead and getting up. I love that's. I'm like, oh yes.
Yeah, it was a dope line.
Yeah, I was trying to see what's the maximum amount of puns I can fit into it without it being grotesque. And I think I hit just that limit.
That's the most fun sort of process, is figuring out just how much can I cram in there.
Exactly.
I don't know. I would like to see more of this character someday.
Oh, I definitely intend on doing more. Afterwards, after I finished, I realized that the character wasn't done with me either. So we'll be seeing him again, I'm sure.
I just always want more puns. The puns will continue until morale improves.
How about you, Ryan? What led you to your word?
Yeah, so kind of thinking back to the time, it was kind of just, it was difficult, if I'm going to be honest, and kind of finding the group of you guys and finding other artists. It's kind of like a period of searching for people in a time when I was really lonely, because at that time, at least for me, we were in lockdown, and I felt like I was carrying around a lot of sludge and a lot of like these gross feelings, and I immediately thought of the symbolism of ink, of something black and weighty, and I had a couple ideas at first of trying to do something about like, an artist at his table, fighting with ink and stuff, and it was something that it's been done quite a bit, and so kind of like John, I had this character that I had wanted to play around with, but I really hadn't had the time to do. And he's this character that he's being pursued by someone, and he's called the prisoner. So he's either locked up or he's ensnared in some sort of trap. And so the idea is that he's stuck in a predicament, and then by the end of it, he's getting away. And so just thinking about ink and just thinking about, okay, well, that's the mechanic. That's going to be the trap. The ink is going to be the trap, and just kind of, how does he get out of this? And then tying that into the idea of kind of like these negative emotions, and trying to, rather than kind of, it's kind of like an expression of how I was feeling at the time, of trying to change my line of thinking in a time when I was kind of feeling weighed down. And it just ink immediately. I was just like, this is what I want to do, because it's relative to how I'm feeling.
That's a really great insight to that, and it really changes my perspective on your work. Again, I'm really glad we're able to sit down and really talk about it, all of our stuff, because we're able to now get into the deeper sort of things about our processes and making it. And that is really great stuff that you're doing. I love hearing people take something negative and try to turn it into a positive, especially in the context of your story.
Yeah. And I think also what's pretty neat is there's several stories like Eraser and Scissors, and like they all kind of had this like wild kind of sci-fi dystopian feel to them. And it was kind of funny how just those kind of stories came through, and they almost could take place in the same world, even on a distant planet or something, or a different, I just thought that was actually kind of a neat outcome.
Yeah, if I may jump in as the outsider.
Of course.
You didn't do anything for the book. You're not allowed to talk. What are you talking about? Get out of here.
Well, it's interesting because I know Drew F. Lee, Incandescence Comics, came up with that little idea of let's just do artist supplies to put the book, the anthology concept together. And everybody's process came from different directions. Like Monty's process came from visuals and making those visuals coalesce into the story and having that fit into that theme. Or like John and Ryan, you both went the story route. You had these character concepts and emotional experiences that then infused and plugged in with that supplies concept. Whereas there were other points where like Aaron and Brian too, you guys kind of came from the selection of the object and moved your stories up from there, built it up from there, correct? Mm-hmm. So it's just cool to see that one little tiny idea sprouts and goes in different directions and different pulls based on artistic styles and writerly sensibilities. And as I listen to all of you speak, that's really what I see too. And I'm sitting here, not judging you, but enjoying, as I've gotten to know you all more, I go, oh, this makes so much sense with the writerly sensibility that each and every one of you has, because your process is illuminated by the way you grabbed onto the pen or the ink or whatever you grabbed and how you treated it. It's cool to see, and especially cool to see you talk about it. Mm-hmm. All right, I'll shut up.
That's perfect. I wanted to go into the creative process a little bit more. I know a few of us spoke on it a little bit because Monty and Gretchen, your stories came out pretty quick. Gretchen, you said that you just like to get things done quick because you just want them out, out of your system. So because you won't finish them if you let them sit. Is that how you do all your work?
Yeah.
The work that gets
the
done.
work that gets done. Yeah, I'd say that. It's pretty much, it's pretty much something that I've just kind of learned about myself, and I know that like I don't, I just spent like all of today. I was today and yesterday I was at this at an academic conference, and I was giving a paper, and I spend most of my time. I work for universities. I spend a lot of my time in and around academia, and I've always sort of been this kind of like, type A, like, turn it in, get it done.
I have an assignment due.
I got an assignment due. Like, I got to turn it in, and like that tends to actually be like when I'm the most effective. And because I can say it's like, okay, I got a deadline, ready, set, go, boom, I got it, boom, I get a gold star, good job, Gretchen, and then then I'm fine. But if I don't have that, which is what, it's why none of you have ever actually seen what this book I'm working on, is because if I don't have that, then it just will be like, oh, well, this panel is giving me like a bit of trouble, and I can't really conceptualize how I'm going to do that. So I'm just going to take a couple days and sleep on it, and I'll come up with something later. And then that becomes 6 months. And I'm just like, oh, wow. Whoops. So like, yeah, basically, especially when it comes to kind of group projects like this, like something I know about myself is if I don't really kind of just sit down and do it, I won't do it. And I think like the full, once we had the concept down, the full design and inking of the pages probably took less than about a week. So I was just kind of, just get it done.
Yeah. What do you do do you script your stuff? Do you just thumbnail and go for it? How do your stories come about?
Yeah, just kind of go for it. I mean, I was like, I don't know if this is advisable, but this is kind of just how I've always kind of been doing is I sort of have an idea in my head of like, I tend to break down text. So like if I have, for example, I've been adapting songs, so I'll say like, okay, I want 4 lines on this page. These are the 4 lines, and like I'm looking at them, okay, maybe this is what comes to mind. So in this case, there's like I had to kind of go backwards. I have 4 pages. This is my concept. How do I kind of break it up page by page? And then once I have that, then I pretty much just, because in this instance, I worked entirely digitally, which is fairly normal for me. And so I kind of just do a basic, just like crappy sketch where it's like kind of, okay, this goes here, panel by panel, just really, really basic. And then I just, fill it in. And if there is, I also this tends to be a reason why I like to work dialogue free where I can. In terms of my kind of more illustrative work, as opposed to like my cartoonier work, obviously those are cartoons, so they need some dialogue. But in my more kind of illustrative graphic novel style work, I don't usually have speech that's like indicated by bubbles. And so because of that, it tends to just all be entirely visuals. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be kind of plotted around dialogue in the same way that I normally would. So in this case, it was a lot about plotting around large swear words on walls. And
which is why when I say like I wrote the story, that gives me way too much credit, because there's like not very much writing in there. More of the concept by
a couple very evocative words.
I gotta say, Gretchen, I really the way that you described the way that you make comics, it also sort of applies to me. I don't know about you, but I always kind of think that like I'm figuring out the way conversation moves through images, and then I worry about all the dialogue, which maybe that's why all my dialogue's terrible. But like this idea of like seeing something in motion just by on the page. Then again, Bradley, I think once you said that I was a shotgun when it comes to my comics. So I'm just putting stuff out there constantly. So.
How about you, Monty? What's your process like? Looking at your work, I get a sense that it's very thought out and planned. Is that correct?
It is to some extent, but I do make a lot of major changes to it as I would go along. But I would have it thought out and planned, and I do thumbnail all the pages before pencil and ink. But as I say, major changes can kind of come in. I can go off on a completely different sidetrack that I'd never planned to begin with, and kind of work my way back into the original route that I planned in my story. But yeah, it would be fairly planned. And then in terms of the Artery story, I'd really wanted to do a wordless comic. Love wordless comics. So I had decided it was going to be just the images. And as I say, kind of certain images that I wanted to have within the story came to mind. And from there, it just all kind of flowed. And so it didn't take long to thumbnail and get the rough pencils done.
Yeah, I love the way your story turned out. Like, I think yours was the first one that I saw from everyone's words, and I was like, oh, whoa, this is pretty sweet. So quick too. What the heck?
Yeah, it was jarring how high quality it was in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, it felt like
Both
the next
you and
day.
Gretchen, you guys started out the race so fast. The rest of us were like, what's happening? Give us a second.
No second.
Yeah. It is Monty, your work is just so beautiful. And
Thanks
just,
very much.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, for me personally, my process is pretty like long, I'd say. I don't know. Like I go in with an idea, like for this one for Sharper, I had the idea, okay, I want some artists to like go crazy and sharpen their finger to make like the best work they possibly can. And you know, I don't know, I was like, okay, that'd be a cool visual. How do I build a story around that? And so I just went through and like, okay, she has a family, she's whatever, she, you know, whatever. And I just have all these ideas and all these like backstory. And I'm like, okay, I don't need to tell all of that, but how can I get as much as possible in like an elegant kind of way? And I just go through and start putting in panels and thinking about dialogue. And that goes on for probably like a few weeks. And then I get into the pencils and then the panels and then the hand lettering and all that kind of stuff. But
Aaron, I actually had a question for you, because I know like in your story you have like a bit where they zoom in on, you know, something that she's made and it's like, it's a masterpiece.
oh, I know, God, that
The
was
best thing she's ever done. Oh my God. I was like, how on earth did you like kind of sit there and have to kind of come up with like, oh God, it's gotta be the, you know?
yeah.
How
that
did
was
you
so scary. So like I was like, okay, I have to draw like the best thing I possibly can. And I was like, okay, that's not gonna happen. So I'm just gonna make like a representational kind of like illustration. Doesn't need to be like exactly what it is or something.
I think that's like a trope you sort of see in certain media, where whenever you're telling a story that somehow requires like, oh, this is like a great piece of art, or this is like a great whatever. It's like, oh, okay. In addition to making this, now I have to also make this other complete thing that is also good. I think it's like movie Cloud Atlas or something has like, and so wrote the greatest poem that ever existed that changed the world. What's the poem? We're not going to tell you because we can't create the greatest poem. So just like
that Monty Python sketch with the funniest joke in the world, and you don't actually ever hear it.
Wait, you do hear it. It's just in German. It's,
oh yeah.
It's about
was
a
Peanut walking?
who was assaulted. What? Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, because around the time I was making that story and like working on that panel, I was listening to Benjamin Mara talk about his comic Night Business and how in it he, you know, draws these girls, and he says when he draws them, they're like the most hideous looking creatures you can think of, but he says in the book like the most beautiful girls you've ever seen, you know, yada yada yada, and he keeps like drilling that even though they look like not even human, you know what I mean? But he says like that when people read it, they like get, okay, well, that's a representation of like a beautiful person for this book, and he says it seems to work. So I'm like, all right, well, works for Benjamin Mara, I guess it'll work for me.
Ben Mara's also, I mean, if you ask me, he's one of the best like new faces in the industry. It's really rare to see someone with like that much personality in his work. He definitely, like, for me personally, has been a really big inspiration.
What's your process like, John?
Usually it starts out with me thinking about the idea for 2 to 3 months, and then spending a handful of days creating kind of like a novel script. So nothing's broken down. It's just as if you were reading it like a book, just to get all the ideas out. And then going in and figuring out, okay, how many panels can I fit in this page? How much of that whole story can I condense, break down, and make 4 pages? And then after that, it's just all digital, doing rough lines with blue lines or whatever. Even with digital, I still like to do that just because it looks right. And then the inking on top of it, and then the lettering, and then fortunately didn't have to do any coloring, so I got to dodge that. That's about it, really. Usually goes that way for pretty much everything. I think about it way too long, and then the actual production time is like 10% of that whole time.
That's kind of how it is for me too. I'd say, like, I just stress out about it, not really stress, but just like continue pondering, like, the story, like what I can change, like what I can do to make it better. Just all those questions.
Yeah, and that was, whenever you get it in and then there's more time on the deadline, I kept going back and looking at my pages and being like, God, I wish I could fix that. And then fortunately at the end, I think the files that I had given were either the wrong size or something, so I had to re-upload them. So I was given that opportunity to make those small, just quick little changes before sending it back in. So, but we should talk about Kevin's too before we all roll out of here.
Yeah,
He wasn't able to join us. Curley.
Yeah.
And everybody else that is in here too. It'd be nice to do some shout outs for the rest too.
Our Ginkbeast story, which I really love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a memory of Ginkbeasts that was one of the first real times I got to interact with her was she posted in the Discord forum wondering about the sequencing for, I think, the last page of her story and how to have narrative sense happen. And there was just a really great conversation at the beginning of the union, figuring out how to interact with one another. And it was really cool seeing people posting cut-ups of their suggested redos. I think Drew had a suggestion. I know I was suggesting, and she just like incorporated those changes and came back with her own iteration of it. And it was a really cool moment where I saw the potential of the union and also how fast and fiery her creative process is. And so I often think about that when we're working on the draw jams or other things, is how she interacts and that chemistry she has and the fast artistic sensibility. So it's a cool thing.
I just personally, I'm just in love with her drawing style. I think it's incredible, and like it's so unique, and even in a book of unique styles, and everyone has their unique style, but hers is just really, really graphic, really stand out. Something that I really enjoy seeing every time she posts something. But I thought it was just such a fun and kind of weird and whimsical addition to the book as well. I really enjoy her story.
Well, I think that's also the benefit of having so many people on board, is that you really do. I think that every story is incredibly different, visually speaking, story-wise. I would be very shocked if someone thought that 2 stories were made by the same person in this book, especially for the case of Ginkbeast.
Yeah, definitely. I was really impressed with how consistent she kept everything looking like. I had trouble with that, with Sai keeping his face looking the same as he was aging. And keeping them recognizable. And I mean, even though the character was just like an ink blot, the characterization and the world that the character was in was so consistent on every page and every panel. I was really impressed by that story.
I think Ryan hasn't told us about his process yet. If you want to fill us in.
Yeah, sure. So my process is pretty chaotic because I'm working on a bunch of different things at once. I think when I took this on, I was working on another anthology that was attributing Weapon X by Barry Windsor Smith.
Cool.
And I was ramping up for the Nomads Kickstarter, and I was working on 2 other books. And so what happens is, while I'm doing certain parts of the process, say I'm inking something that's not as thought intensive, I will be thinking about story and just thinking about those ideas. So as I'm trying to figure out what characters to use for this scenario, I'm like kind of bouncing back and forth in my mind, like, oh, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that. And once I figured out kind of like the concept itself, then it was just a matter of writing out like a short 4-page script and just saying like, okay, what do I want to happen on this page? What do I want to happen on this page? And, you know, and so on. Because at least for me, working at Anthology, knowing that space is limited, just trying to balance out the actions and figure out like the pacing. So from the time that he gets captured to the time that he escapes, and then what does the getaway look like? And so I just, using 4 pages, broke it down into fourths and so on. And then from there, quick thumbnails, because this had to go out at least pretty quickly, just with everything else going on. And I chose to actually, normally, sometimes what I'll do is I'll ink right over top of my pencils, but for this, I actually did fully rendered pencils. One of my goals for this project was I wanted to try my hand at full rendered pencils and then ink over top of that. Normally I do like a very loose pencil and then I'll just ink all my detail. But for this, I drew in all my details and really try to just like figure out what the values were going to be, because we were working in black and white. And then lastly, for the lettering, something I don't normally do, I don't normally hand letter, but I wanted to learn how to use an Ames guide. And so like for the first 2 pages, I kind of was working it out. And then the last 2 pages, I had to abandon it because it was taking me so long. I was getting like so focused on like trying to get the spacing right and redoing the lettering. And I just eventually was just like, okay, like I'm going to have to just try to get this as close as possible, because I had kind of front loaded all my time on doing the pencils. But usually when I'm doing a project, I'll try to find something to focus on, whether it's like the role of colors or the role of inks or lettering, for instance. And because it was 4 pages, I thought it would be a good opportunity to just try to hand letter it all and see, you know, kind of where I was at with that. But yeah, so that process from beginning to end is just always thinking about the different roles and what different like takes you can do, because even if it's all the same person, you're like the way that you attempt inks, like even just changing your implement and what kind of tool can change the feel of how that story looks.
I was just going to say the layouts, man. I was the progression of your story and the way it led the eye. It was a real treat to read, for sure. It was amazing. Love that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was kind of trying to go for like that Saturday morning serial kind of feel. And that's also kind of like part of like the intro and kind of the cheesy dialogue and just trying to have fun with it. And
I want an action figure now.
That would be fun. That'd be cool.
Yeah, one thing I really liked about your story, Ryan, is that opening panel. You have that little ditty that gives like a little backstory of like the story and like what's going on. I was like, oh man.
Yeah.
When I think of doing something like that.
Jeremiah Jones. Yeah, and that comes from just, I'm reading a lot of like old like Kirby and stuff. And
yeah,
like right now I'm going through like the New Gods and just kind of like thinking about if I want it. So, and that's part of it too, is just taking this character that I've been wanting to do and do small episodic shorts with him. And so figuring out like what that blurb is to introduce the character to a new reader every time. And that was a lot of fun writing that up, like trying to think of like how would like a Stan Lee introduce a character.
Yeah.
Even his name, like Jeremiah Jones, like the alliteration, the same thing as like Bruce Banner, or Peter Parker. Yeah. So just kind of paying homage to that.
I see we have about 5 minutes left. Brian, are there any other questions that we want to go over? Or?
I think that those two sort of wrap everything up. I mean, it's given the time frame that we're sort of working in. And I guess I would really like to just say that I really am honored to take part in all of this and to have my work with your work, and to make this book was really a great experience. I think hopefully for everyone. I know I had a lot of fun working with this I'm so thankful it's done now because I don't have to worry about having any potential errors. I'm never going to look at this book. I'm never going to read it because if I find one single thing, it's like, oh, this is like lightly cropped or whatever. I'm gonna hate it. So I'm never going to read it. But I love this book. It's a really great book. Everyone did a really, really good job with the story.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be a part of it. And to mirror what Ryan was saying earlier, you know, this summer, meeting all you guys, getting that invite from Brad on Instagram. This is the first, you guys are the first time I've really even connected with fellow cartoonists. So like, you know, I had my podcast before. That was just me doing my own thing, right? Interviewing other professionals, not like really collaborating or really talking about the craft, like as peers, you know what I mean? So it was really nice getting to meet all of you guys and really inspiring, kept me like excited about making comics, really kept me in that state throughout the whole pandemic and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, definitely been a lifesaver for me. Honored to work with you guys and really stoked to be a part of it. And just overall was a fun experience. I love anthologies. They're so much fun to do.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys for putting this all together. And like, it was a real pleasure to be a part of it. But obviously it's like, this is not something I would have just, you know, thought of. So I just was really grateful to you guys for coming up with the concept and inviting us all in and putting it all together. And I know it was a lot of work and I know it was a lot of herding cats. And so thank you guys for all the work that you put in on this.
So you guys gonna start planning another one?
Maybe not anytime soon.
Listen, I'm always down.
Right, issue 1 on it, so that was like Pokemon, the first movie.
Maybe this summer. Who knows?
It's also special.
Either too soon.
Yeah. But it's also like a special thing because it's the Indie Comic Union's first sort of group activity, you know, and that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
How's that like, Brad? Like seeing this Indie Comic Union, you know, growing the way it has, and
it's crazy. Like we've already heard, most of us have never had those social experiences. Culture really does raise cartoonists and most artists to be like gladiators. It's you as a free agent against the universe. You know, you never get to team up and really work with someone, and even the comic archetypes of collaborations and things are always like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby or something, where they spiral spectacularly out of control because of egos and a sense of individualism. So I think it's really cool to see this come together. And all I wanted to do was not be isolated doing this silly thing on Instagram. And it, like, within weeks, everybody was like, hot damn, let's make anthologies and let's do all these other projects. I was like, oh, this is just taking off and has a life of its own already.
Like a chemical reaction.
Yeah, right. Everybody was like, I have never had this before. Let's do this.
So it's like, yeah, and I think this is just like such a good example of that, like in the flesh, you know, like it's just it's cool.
I was just going to say, I think it's cool that this is like the first thing that we did start working on together, but it's coming out so much later than some of the other things we've already done. So people are going to get kind of a unique look at where our mindsets were in the beginning of it much later on. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's like the Let It Be, right? Or is it Abby?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Good example.
The reverse order of the production versus the release.
Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed hearing all of us talk about Project Artery. And if you would like to go check out a copy of Project Artery, go ahead and click any of the links below in the YouTube tab. Remember, it's like there's a scene in one where there's people are like, they take over like an airplane. Lizard people take over an airplane, and then a guy goes and he kills all the lizard people. Then he goes to like the guy flying the plane and says, "Now you're gonna suck my," or something.
Yeah,
and that definitely like left me with something. So.
Did it leave you with something?
You know what? It did.